Welcome, everyone. I am Friar Tuck, and this is the Army of Tuck podcast. And what we're going to be talking about today is the effects of corruption, not only on society, but how it also creates and affects the homeless population. If you are into homeless awareness, homeless education, and just getting a deeper understanding of the complexities of homelessness, this is what this podcast is really about. What it allows me to do is to do a deep dive into smaller subjects to give you a deeper understanding of what's going on. And for those of you that follow me during my nightly live stream, on trail, I do a live stream at 7 o'clock every night that I have signal, and give you guys updates from the trail and stuff like that. Well, if you've been following my live stream, then you would be aware that most recently I got pushed off trail, and I ended up at a farmer's, a 45-acre farm, and I got to talk to a farmer, and this farmer was about 80 years old. And he he said in 93 he went to the Soviet Union after it collapsed, and he went to Moscow. And he was talking about, the things that he saw, and just kind of how he was baffled, because he asked himself, he's like, we're supposed to be afraid of these people, and yet they can barely feed themselves. They kind of destroyed their own society. And, as Americans, we thought, oh, well, it would happen to them. It would never happen to us. But from the things in which him and I were talking about, as far as the corruption and how it was working over there and how things would go, it became so much more evident of the reason why we as a society are falling apart. Okay, so let me kind of give you some of the descriptive stories that this gentleman had given me, and so therefore I can delve into them a little bit more. He was talking about how he was there in Moscow, which is the capital city, which is there's going to be the least amount of corruption there. And the way that it would work over there is that everybody worked for the state, had a job, everybody had to go to work. Okay, for a lot of the conservatives in the world, they're like, yeah, put everybody to work. But the thing is the state ended up doing it. It would be a lot like what we're looking at as universal basic income here. That would be the equivalent of what they were doing over in Russia. And so that begins to make you ask the question, is universal basic income something that we should be doing? Because now we have a case study, and I'm going to trust a firsthand account versus what we hear from the news and the media, because the news and the media has their own bias. They are co-opted in their own ways. We can't really trust our news anymore. So being able to get somebody's firsthand account is way more valuable, especially when gathering information or intelligence. And so everybody had a job. And then from that point, so let's say the fuel man. Okay, so the fuel man would he's got a tanker. He gets paid no matter what. He's gonna get his monthly income, but he's not really getting enough to survive. He's just getting enough to just make ends meet. Food, shelter, water, nothing beyond that. And so people want to be able to have creature comforts. So he would pull off to the side of the road, and he would have his gas cans, and people would come up to him and they would buy gas, and that's how he would make his money. So he would sell half of that tank and then take the other half and go and drop it off, because there was no oversight. Because he was talking about how the parks, the grass was like waist high, because the way it started out is everybody started showing up to work, but the supervisors never showed up to work. And after a while, since the supervisors never showed up to work, the workers stopped showing up for work, because they had no oversight, so on and so forth. They had no sense of duty or obligation. They were just there because it was a job, and that was how they made their money. They actually didn't care about what was going on. And so therefore, nobody actually had any accountability, because the supervisors weren't showing up to be able to reprimand the lower workers. And so therefore, you got grass that was waist high, that was never being managed, because the average person was just going there because it was just a job. They weren't getting anything more than what they needed to live. And so therefore, how does that affect somebody's motivation? Okay. And not only, he was telling me several other stories about kind of how the corruption worked within the society, and that this was pretty much the whole reason why the Soviet Union collapsed the way it did, was because they just there was no functionality of government and oversight. They put the programs in place, but nobody really kept an eye on it. So how does that play here in America, and how does that affect society? How does that create homelessness? And like, how does this whole thing really fit together? And this is what I started pondering, because we're going down that same path. Should we do universal basic income? We've lost the dollar in the global market, because we're no longer the reserve currency after what Saudi Arabia did. And so therefore the chickens are coming home to roost, and our currency is about to collapse and be about as worthless as the Weimar Republic. That's a great point in history to be able to pull out, is that what happens when your currency collapses? Well, look at the Weimar Republic. That's the most recent history that's happened, and that's what led to Adolf Hitler becoming Adolf Hitler. If the economy was doing good, we would have never gotten Adolf Hitler, but because of the fact that they were printing money to pay their bills, and then eventually it was actually the Americans who broke the story that they were just printing money with nothing to back it. That all of a sudden overnight you had to take wheelbarrows full of money down just to buy a loaf of bread. The employers would start paying you every hour on the hour, because of how much the currency was inflating at such a quick time. And then the wife would come, grab the money, go to the local grocery store, because as the currency was inflating, so was the price of goods and the price of food. And we may not experience something like that here, but we could come to something very, very close like that. And why is that happening? It's because we have allowed, as a society, willful corruption. We look at our ruling elites and we aspire to be them, knowing full well their dark side, how they got there. It is common knowledge that if you're going to become a multimillionaire, a billionaire, or anything like that, that you will have to sell your soul at some point in time. And so therefore we consider that form we consider that to be a good thing, because we aspire to be able to do that and to have that as well, or at least some people. And as society grows and we put more emphasis on materials and marketing and all that stuff, the desire to be able to aspire to be that becomes greater. Well, if you're going to sell your soul, that means that you're going to do things that are immoral, unethical, and possibly even illegal, because that is the epitome of selling your soul. And so therefore, not only we as a society have allowed it, but we have perpetuated itself in the hopes that one day we can actually be there and have it. And so instead of, and those of you who watch my channel, I'm not a Christian, but there is some good information within the Bible, and it's something common here in the United States that people are able to get a closer relation to. And this goes to the parable about the wild olive branches. And for those of you that know the Bible, you know what I'm talking about. You let that little bit of a wild branch grow, then what's going to happen is it will infect the whole tree. And so therefore it is important that when you have negative aspects of society, that you do kind of push it out. Now, the way in which we do it is that's going to be up for debate. But what is the long-term effects of leaving that unchecked? Because the church has become more commercialized. It's more of it used to be you had to live a certain lifestyle to be able to go to heaven. Now it's as long as you believe you can go to heaven. And so therefore it's been commercialized. It's been co-opted by the state. as a 501c3. So therefore, the state gets to dictate what is said, what is done, and so therefore the church has lost its autonomy. And through that, and through the moral checks that society used to put in, this allows corruption to be able to run. And so now we're finding out, a great thing to point to is during the 2020 election, or actually post-2020 election, there was a study done that if people knew about the Hunter Biden laptop, that like 10% of them would not have voted for President Biden. Instead, they would have voted for a different candidate, even if it meant voting third party, just because they didn't want to vote for Donald Trump, but they wouldn't have voted for Joe Biden. And so now we can sit there and see, well, this man was allowed to get there because this we allowed the state, and we even backed the state and justified it, the state's control over media and this and that, by saying, oh, well, we need to make sure we got good information, we need to trust the state, we need to do da 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 da. Because the state used to be a benevolent being. Its sole function was to protect and grow the assets of of either the Commonwealth or the Republic. Okay, and so government itself, had its way of being able to build trust within the community, especially if you're, building their assets. And post World War II, the American value, the value of all of our goods, our land, and everything that we had, became much more valuable. So therefore, it was easier to trust the government because the government was managing our resources properly. And in the ability to trust the government at that point in time, we kind of became derelict in our own duty in making sure that we have proper management all the way down the road, versus only having proper management one at a time. Okay, and so with the presidential debate, okay, so let's look at kind of like causation. By the time this gets released, this will be on the eve of the presidential debate. And so, here's something for you to think about, is that although Hunter Biden was able to not to be able to say that that his laptop was Russian disinformation, and a large segment of society believed it until they found out otherwise. Well, what are they doing with Trump? They just gave him, 42 felonies? Well, if you take him on somewhere like CNN and you do a public debate where they now sit there and say, well, if you would have known about Hunter, you wouldn't have voted for him. Well, we're going to pretend that didn't exist, and we're going to hope that we were not able to, that you didn't find out about it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to peel 10% of the vote from Trump, because those people that would not vote for somebody that had a criminal record, now they're going to use that as a platform to not only peel off his votes, and although he may win the presidential debate, and he may, his base may sit there and go, yes, he did great, and there might be a few people that are swayed over. The hope and the idea, because of, okay, well, now we found this out, is going to be, be done that way. And so we're allowing things like this to happen, and we're not really educating ourselves and keeping things informed. And so again, as we keep going down this road, as time goes along, we are allowing corruption to be able to run rampant. We are becoming complicit in it. And this corruption is destroying our country in the same way that it destroyed the Soviet Union, because that guy wasn't able to take the fuel all the way to where it needed to be. People were not able to have a better life. The society wasn't functioning the way it properly should. And so in people's greed, or in people's fear of not being able to have enough, they would therefore cause issues within the system, because they had no duty, no honor, or no loyalty to their country, because they in themselves, they felt that their country had no loyalty to them. And if you listen to the rhetoric on both the left and the right, we are hearing that as well. Okay, and so if that causes a slow or even fast erosion or decline of your economy, to where the average person cannot support themselves, then what does that do to people that are housed? I mean, if you still got to pay rent, but you got to choose between rent and food, because everything has decayed, and you're relying on universal basic income because there's no jobs, or the jobs that are out there aren't even giving you enough to be able to survive, so therefore you still need universal basic income. But part of your universal basic income is you got to go work at a job anyway, so therefore you become an employee of the state. And so therefore, again, we go down that whole rabbit trail. We've seen it play out. That's part of the reason why the Soviet Union collapsed economically. It was the vultures picking at the carcass, versus the community coming together and saying, okay, this is our community. We live here. We're going to make sure our park is taken care of. We're going to make sure that our services are taken care of, and we're going to hold ourselves and our community accountable. And therefore, we have a thriving community versus the, oh, well, you know what, the government's paying for it, and all of a sudden it takes the accountability out of it, because we are no longer taking responsibility for our own actions. And if you notice, this is also happening in society, and putting it on somebody else. This is what happens within the homeless industrial complex in the more liberal areas, is that they look at it and they go, oh, well, the government's supposed to take care of it. I pay my taxes. I'm sorry that you're homeless, but we've got all these services. You need to go get it. But then most of those services and being able to have functional services don't even make it down to the homeless community. And so what is that going to do as jobs go away through automation and through artificial intelligence and through advanced robotics? I mean, and then not only that, the foreign-born worker is a more preferred worker over the native-born worker for various reasons. And so therefore, if you're a native-born worker and your job has been automated, and they can find somebody that is a lot more economical for them, so that they can increase their profit. Because remember, we want to be rich just like Bill Gates. Okay, we want to be rich just like Warren Buffett. We want to be the next Elon Musk. And so therefore, we're going to let these people get away with it, because we know that put in the same situation, we would do it and we would be perfectly fine with it. And therefore, we aspire to be that. Okay, and so with allowing these entities to go unchecked, because there has to be balance, there has to be accountability, there has to be a reason. Although a lot of people didn't agree with the whole 90% tax once you made over a certain amount, what did that actually do to the economy? Now, a capitalist will tell you that what that did was it slowed the economy down. It disincentivized it disincentivized people to work. But on the same thing, it also drove up the value of things. It made things where you kind of had to work within a finite area. But the resources belong to the public. The water, the timber, the land, all of that belongs to you and me. That is our rights of citizenship. And so therefore, to disincentivize a certain amount of production, what that did was that was responsible use of our resources, responsible use of the things in which we had, because we would say you can go up to so much, but once you reach that level, yeah, you need to taper it back, or you need to replace the overage, the extra that you took from your community, and you need to put that back in the form of taxes, because that is what allowed things to be able to move. But the point where we didn't get irresponsible, the second we started lowering the tax rate, all of a sudden now we are coming up with issues where we're causing desertification, deforestation, famines. There's all kinds of stuff that are playing into it, because we weren't being responsible to our ecosystem, because we were more interested in money and profit and status and owning that island. And so in order to be able to get to something like that, what is it that we have to do that is reckless and irresponsible to be able to acquire that? Because being productive is different than being rich. Being rich means you know how to game the system. Being productive means you can go out there and be productive. Okay, there comes a certain point in which the wealthy person stops becoming productive and they start becoming counterproductive to society. Okay, there has to be one of the great things that built this country and made it the powerhouse that it was, is that things was held at the community level. And because they were at the community level, the local businesses and the local organizations that worked within that community had an accountability to that community. But the second you take away the accountability to that community and you allow it to become a larger entity, therefore it has more power to be able to go and manipulate the system for its own benefit. And if it's not working in the best interest of the community, then it is working against the community, and therefore will lead to the degradation of not only society, but to the degradation of the economy. And so as it becomes harder and harder to live, because we have chosen profit over responsibility, we have chosen to go after our instant gratification instead of understanding that it needs to be a balance to everything. Too much of anything is bad. Too much water. I know somebody who was literally told that they were addicted to water and needed to slow down because they were actually doing harm to their body because of just they were washing all the nutrients out, and it was causing health problems. And so too much of anything can be detrimental to the health of the society, to the health of your body, to the health of your mind, to the health of your relationships. Things like this it has its way of completely eroding and destroying something, but it does it in such a slow manner that by the time you actually are able to catch it, it's too late. Okay, and so this is something that we as a society need to be aware of, and what's really playing into this. So you might be asking yourself, what do I do? How do I fix this? A lot of this starts because of the level of the issues that we have. A lot of this starts at your state house. At your community meetings. It's not about going there and going rah 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 rah. Because nobody's going to listen to somebody that gets up there and grandstands and tries to get sound bites. People want to hear solutions. You know your community better than anybody else. You know how to be able to take something that's nothing and reuse it, because one of the things you are as a prepper is you know how to repurpose things in so many different ways, even as a survivalist. And so therefore, you know how to get the most out of the least. Well, it may be time to where, even though we've got a federal government that is basically nationalized the government, and there is no such thing as states anymore because of how overreaching the federal government is. Maybe it's time, as society falls apart, to start reforming our communities, to rebuild those communities the way it was supposed to. Just like you have the whole wild olive branch, you get rid of the parts of society or those within society that are causing the problem. It does not mean that you go and unalive them or expire them or anything else like that. What that means is they get ostracized. They're no longer allowed within the community. They're pushed out. Now, a lot of people want to take that, and this happened within the freeman community when people started talking about accepted for value and the fact that you were sold out on the international market. And so all these people went and go, I want my money, I want my money, I want my government to be responsible, but I want my free money. Well, that's an oxymoron. Okay, it's there, but it's there to be responsible. It's there for different reasons, and you've got to do a lot more research on it than just something surface level like what I talked about, because it was such a complex issue that I understood the truth in it, but as far as application, the way that our society is set up is it won't recognize it anymore unless you're in the upper echelons, like the Secretary of Treasury for the United States would understand what's going on, versus one of his many minions that are underneath him who are just going with the system that they've been told, even though that's not really what it works as. But you have people that will play on your greed and use it against you to be able to manipulate you and get you to do stupid stuff. And just like the people who want to go around and say, oh, you're homeless, so you must be a drug addict and you're a lazy bum and you'll never amount to anything in society. not realizing that 50% of small businesses went out of business because of the pandemic. We lost 50% of our small businesses. That is the heart and soul of this country. And those of you that follow this channel know that it happens. That there are several subscribers and people that I talk to, like All American Prepper, who had a business that was part of that 50%. And that basically gutted America and turned us into the corporate states of America. And now you have these large entities that have so much power and control that the local communities are going to be decimated because of this. And therefore, it's going to lead to homelessness at a mass scale, not only because of the dissolution of the small towns. I mean, I'm paying more in sales tax out here in the rural areas than I was in the big city. That's a huge incentive. Very few people will be able to keep up with it just because of how high the taxes are out here, which is really weird. I thought it would be opposite, but I'm paying almost 15 to 18% sales tax out here in the rural areas versus if in the city I'm paying something around 9%. And so I'm looking at it, and like for $5, I'm paying like 90 cents in sales tax, which is really, really strange. But the thing is this is what's happening. This is what's causing things to kind of fall apart. And I think that we as a society need to just ignore the federal government. No, not ignore it. Okay, the federal government is going to be there. It's da 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 da. But we are a community society. We are a community-based society. So you got to figure out what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and you need to be talking to the leaders in your community and having that talk with them of how do we protect our community from the idiocracy of somebody 3,000 miles away, because we're going to end up having the same argument that we had back in the Revolutionary War days, is no taxation without representation. And are the small communities and are the communities even being represented? No, they're not. So there's going to be a lot of people that say no taxation without representation. And it's up to you to work within your community leaders, okay? That may mean going and sitting down and having a talk with the mayor and saying, hey, look, we need to figure things out. There's going to be a lot of people that lose a lot of things. We need to take care of them. We need to keep our community together, okay? Because if you lose the community, what will be coming is going to be so much worse and so much more barbaric. The only way that you will be able to keep society together, or at least keep some sort of civility and humaneness amongst ourselves, is to build a community. And communities, I go through them. Sometimes I fit in, sometimes I don't. But you will fit into some communities and you won't fit into others. You need to find where you fit in and build that community up, because that will be not only the key to your survival to prevent you from becoming homeless, but what these people experience, the mass starvation because of the mismanagement of resources and the incompetent reliance on government to be able to provide everything for you from cradle to grave, has created a society that never really took care of themselves. Now, over the last 30 years, they have changed their society. They've become a lot more self-sufficient, but that is what it is. But anyways, guys, this is my take on how the corruption is going to not only create homelessness, make it worse, but it's going to destroy our communities and our society. And these are some ways in which you can go out and make a difference and make an immediate impact, so that you can at least save some part of this country as it falls apart. Okay, because if you're homeless and there's no places around this country that are doing things like that, the good ones will have nowhere to go and they're going to be chewed up. Okay, and it's not going to be pleasant for anybody, even the good ones. So you guys know how to help the channel. Become a subscriber. Come on over to Patreon. Everything else is in the description. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next podcast.